There we go. So we'll let this cycle through the slides a few more times, about another minute or so, and get started. I'll be starting in just a moment. I need to forward somebody the link. You did not get it. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, everybody, we'll get started. I hope you are enjoying my handy dandy little slideshow. I've been trying to do this for forever. I want you all to please sign in to the chat box. Give us your name and your organization. If you're representing yourself, please list yourself as a community advocate, because that's how we view you. You're just as important as an agency. And so, and that helps us keep track of who's attending and where people are from. And we can add this to our make sure we add you to our list for receiving the announcements. I'm going to stop the PowerPoint now, and let's see. We will end the slideshow. And can you see me now?
I see a cute kitten.
You see a cute kitten. Okay, I guess I need to stop sharing. That's just a template, but it reminds me of my little kitty cat that passed away a couple of years ago. So I will share our agenda here, and we will just cut to the quick so we can get our on with our presentations. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded. So, okay, where am I? Share screen. There we go. Okay, our consent agenda. If you are having issues receiving our emails, just know that I am going to be sending around, Mary Beth and I will be sending around an email asking people to confirm who they want from their agency to be informed of these meetings. Doesn't mean that we expect you to attend every single one, although if you are a funded agency, you are required to send at least one person to represent your organization. But we're having some problems with emails coming back or not being delivered. And I think some of that is because of our Gmail is being rerouted, or the number of people that we have on our list is not, some servers aren't thrilled with them. So just be aware that we will be trying to check in on that to make sure that we have people that want to receive these invites. Also, I'm trying really hard to, I don't think I got this one up there, but to keep our website updated on when our meetings are, and then other events that are going on through the community. When I get notifications of them, I try really hard to get those up there. So let's start with our consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Sharon. I make a motion to accept the agenda as written.
Pam, second.
Thank you. Motion to move and accept. We will do it this way. Any opposed to the motion? Sign or write in the chat. Any abstentions from the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. I am going to go through and give you a bit of an update. Oh, that's right, Arida. Okay, okay. We have, just bigger. stop sharing. We have currently a rating and ranking. We have a competition going on for the Racine, for the HUD CoC fiscal year 21 funding. We have received applications. The Rating and Ranking Committee has met and they have reviewed and I've sent out announcements yesterday to the organizations. We will be posting those on the internet as we move forward, and you will be able to see the actual applications, the individual ones from the organizations that were accepted and submitted, as well as the collaborative application that we will be submitting to HUD. That will be posted by November, I think the second week in November. I am still working to get the diversity, equity, and inclusion work group up and moving. I could use a few more participants on that. If you are interested, please sign in. What this involves is meeting according to the way that the group decides, and then examining our policies and procedures for diversity and equity. We need a diversity and equity statement on inclusion for LGBTQ population, and we need it for disabilities, for lack of a better term, and we need it for inclusion of race and ethnicity. And so those statements will need to be written. Don't let that panic you, because we also have templates from other organizations, other CoCs that we can use and work in, tailor into our own. But I can't do this on my own. It's very important that I have representation of the communities that we are trying to write equity statements for, and included on these committees as well. Also, I want to say, if you are an executive director, consider having someone from your staff, a case manager or a program coordinator or anyone else, attend some of these meetings. It need not be just you. And so we need to spread this around. Even consider having someone from your board represent on these work groups. Again, they're established according to, Holly, did you have your hand raised? I didn't see.
Yeah, I do. I have a quick question. So on that committee, you said you could use a couple more committee members. Does it have to be somebody that's technically a member of the Continuum of Care or the Alliance? Or could it be a community member that's like a community advocate?
It could be community advocates, and quite frankly, to be a member of the Alliance, you just attend.
Okay.
At this point. So
I just have someone that might be interested in that, and I wanted to check before I brought it up.
Sure, and that's a good point. Having people that are able to examine what we say we stand for objectively, and looking at what we are doing is really good. And then yes, and so also consider, if you are an ED that's pretty active in this and you want to be a part of this, consider mentoring someone, or if you're part of the community, consider mentoring someone who may not normally feel comfortable stepping up and placing themselves on these committees. That's the best way to truly get people moving and involved. And that's how I got involved, quite frankly, in a lot of the different things that I did. I got involved because somebody said, "Hey, would you like to come along?" Makes it a little easier, less scary, and less intimidating. So please consider that. We really do need that. Moving along to the updates, we have not met officially as our strategic planning initiatives. We've had some people retire, move on to different jobs, so it's kind of taken the committees out of commission. We've also had the funding going on with rating and ranking and writing grants and all that good stuff. So, but I can tell you that I've been in conversation to get for the initiative that's looking at landlords engagement, and I'm looking for people who want to be a part of that as well. But we're looking at getting some more, we have a housing navigator for the CoC who helps to place people. We have had, we are part of the emergency housing vouchers. You'll hear that referred to as EHV, that we are participating with WIDA, and that is to help people that are in our rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing get moved onto these vouchers so they are no longer in the housing programs. We'll open those up for people that have been on in shelter to move forward and hopefully open up more spots for people who are needing to move into places, and then get people that are in those temporary programs like permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing into something that's a more permanent situation for them. And we're excited about that. We have LSS, Hope Center, Safe Haven, and Halo that are participating in the EHVs. And so again, that's a really great thing that's going on. And then there are a number of things that I'm working on with the advocacy director of Medicaid program in the state of Wisconsin, in conjunction with the other CoCs, to kind of find some more funding to get help with supportive services for permanent supportive housing and also for our navigators. So there are some things that are working. We just haven't gotten to the, I think the whole COVID thing shut us down with landlords, and trying, quite frankly, to get used to using Zoom now moving forward. This is my third year on the grants for the CoC, and that is really helping me. I kind of feel like I sort of know what's going on. I ask you to be extend your grace a little bit longer so I can get some of these things motivated. In the meantime, if you're interested in working with me on those, please, I cannot do it all myself and should not be doing it all myself. I am not the representative of everyone that can use our services, and we need a lot of voices. We need voices for all our committees and work groups from people who actually have experienced homelessness, and that's important. We need to have those voices, as well as that is a part of the diversity and inclusion. It's not just race, ethnicity, sexual orientation. It's also looking against ableism, and looking against and having people with the voices that actually experience these scenarios, helping us work through getting situations set up and meaning what we truly want, which is, as we said in our mission statement, collaborating to serve people experiencing homelessness and at-risk homelessness in the county. In order to do that well, we need to have those who have experienced our services as well, or experienced needing our services and not getting them. We have, under new business, an ICA update from Arida. Arida has been excused for this. She had a death in the family, and so we offer our condolences to her, and we will hear from her. In fact, she will be our presenter at our meeting in let's see, this is October, in November, and she will be talking about the coordinated entry and how that works for getting people through the housing process and from shelter and into the permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing projects. So that's a little teaser for the next month. At this point, does anybody have any questions for me, in case I missed or misstepped or anything? Missed anything? I'm looking and I don't see hands up, so I am going to see if I can. We're going to have our presentations now. I am anticipating, let's see, I need to redo the sharing. Oops. Let's see if I can get this and put our presentation up. And okay, so our presentation, our first presentation is looking at street outreach and shelters. we felt that this was important to have a discussion about, because there's been a lot of views and a lot of questions about what is occurring. What is occurring for, how do people get into these? How do they receive their services? Why do we have people still on the street? Why don't people, why are people being turned away? And so it's important. So we brought the shelter people on to talk about this. We have, now I gotta get everybody on here. We have Kristen from Burlington Transitional Center. We have Shabraya, are you on here? I wasn't sure if I saw you.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Shabraya is representing the Safe Haven Youth Shelter. Holly Anderly is representing Halo. Scott Metzel is representing the Street Outreach Program. Who am I missing here? Jory, are you here? Jory here? Pam is here. Pam Handro is here.
I'm here.
Oh, Jory, you are here. Okay.
Sorry, I was just on a different app.
That's okay. And so Jory speaks to the Women's Resource Center together with Pam Handro. So I'm just going to open it up. Why don't we start with street outreach and then move into it? And we're going to do 30 minutes on each of these sessions. And so Scott, oh, I'm going to stop sharing here. So, and I don't like that. Cancel, there we go. So Scott, why don't you go ahead and give us the talk, starting with the true purpose of street outreach.
All right, sure. I'm Scott Metzel. I'm from Hope Center of Racine, and one of the things that we do is street outreach here in Racine County. And street outreach serves people who sleep in places not meant for human habitation. That means a place that's not an apartment, that's not a house, or it could be a car, it could be outside. For example, currently, we have a few people sleeping in tents, some people sleeping outside of public buildings, a couple in cars, a number of different types of living situations, none of which are places where there's a bathroom at that place, running water, heat, electricity, or any of that. So that's what we serve for people who are in those conditions because they cannot enter shelter or do not want to enter shelter, one of those reasons. And there could be many reasons for either of those cases. Sometimes someone might not be able to enter shelter because of a certain criminal background, for example, being on the sex offender registry, then you might not be able to enter shelter. It could be because they had an incident at the shelter. If someone threatens shelter staff or threatens people who are at the shelter or is violent, often they're not welcome back, at least immediately. Sometimes they might be able to get back later, but there may be a period when they're on suspension because of something that happened in the shelter. It could be because there's not enough room in the shelter when we are there. Could be wait lists, especially when we're in COVID. There's less shelter spaces. We're trying to keep social distancing and so on. Or it might be because of a certain shelter policy. We don't know as much about that, but there are a number of reasons why someone cannot enter shelter or might be on a waiting list waiting to go into shelter. Also, I mentioned that people might not want to enter shelter, and that's really what we see mostly in our work on street outreach. The vast majority of the people who we serve have many reasons why they don't want to go to shelter. It could be something that happened in a shelter, but for most of them, it seems to be related to being independent and doing my own thing and maybe having some kind of social anxiety and not being wanting to be around people. A lot of the people we meet are somewhat isolated and disconnected while they are staying outside. And as some background for me personally, I've been doing street outreach here in Racine since 2014. So this winter of 2021, 2022 will be my 8th winter of street outreach in Racine. When I started, we had the Hospitality Center. Just some more background, back in 2014, before that, Halo was a dry shelter, which meant that you could not go into Halo. You would be asked to leave if you were intoxicated or so on. They were looking at a certain program there. It was operating as a program. So the concern was that people would be left outside on the street because of the shelter rules that were a barrier to going there. So the hospitality center ran a winter shelter for quite a number of winters. My first winter that I was doing street outreach, hospitality was running. They closed that winter. The following winter, the community put together a motel voucher program. Some of us will fondly remember that or otherwise. Following that, Segway was formed, and there was a shelter called Host that was a low barrier shelter. So Halo was still running their program. Host Shelter had a low barrier program. You could come in if you were intoxicated or had any problems. Really in a low barrier shelter, mostly what the shelter is looking at is someone's behavior, how they behave, not what condition they're in when they come in. Following the Host Shelter, there were some changes at Halo. Halo became a low barrier shelter and opened up to anyone, basically, with some few limitations. Then we got into Corona and had some limitations due to social distancing and going to what we call non-congregate shelters, separating people out more. And now we're still going through that with limited space. Through all of those different changes, one thing that has been common through all of those winters is that there has always been people on the streets in Racine. I think my first winter, when we were doing street outreach, we found some nights that we would go out and we wouldn't find anyone. Now, my assessment is we just didn't know what we were doing, because since 2015, 2016, there has never been a week that we have not had people living on the streets in Racine. And it's not for not having shelter or something like that. It's because people have many reasons that they're out there. So when we talk about homelessness and unsheltered homelessness, street outreach and shelters, one thing to keep in mind is that homelessness is a very complex subject that has a lot of terminology that means a lot of different things that sort of confuses the issue. So when we try to make black and white statements about it's like this, sometimes it's not always helpful to really understanding the broader situation. And if we look at the real root, if we go down into the structures that are around us, a major problem is affordable housing, or the cost of housing, versus how much income people have. And there is really a shortage of housing that people on low incomes or fixed incomes can afford. And even in Racine, just the number of units isn't there to really support the low income population. Even those of us who have housing programs have challenges finding 1-bedroom apartments within a certain amount of time. We have people who we cannot house, not because they have barriers, but because it's hard to find an actual unit. So when you have that shortage of housing for people with low income, it puts a lot of pressure onto households and individuals. And usually people go into situations that we would call doubled up, or colloquially they call couch surfing or something like that, meaning people are staying somewhere where they are not on the lease and they're not official tenants. Sometimes they might be, tossing a little bit of money to somebody, but not officially as a rent thing. Sometimes they might be giving some kind of services or food cards. Sometimes it might be just through relationships. But the number of people who are staying with other people here in Racine, we're not sure how many people that is, but it's a staggering number. It's in thousands of households that are there, huge numbers. And this situation is a very unstable situation. Some of them might have a good relationship and know that this place that they're staying could be good for a while. Some people might actually have a bedroom. Others might be going night to night and never really knowing whether they're going to be in that same place the next night. You might be at the whim of the person you stay with. They go to work, they lock the door, you're outside until they come back from work. Or someone has their girlfriend come over, you have to go. Or situations change, people get put out on short notice, or have the feeling that they could be put out on short notice and feel a lot of anxiety over that. And it's very challenging. People aren't secure about their belongings. People might not feel secure about having their mail sent to a location or move so much that they can't really keep track of their important documents like that. And also the psychological aspect of just not feeling welcome. Sometimes people express, they come in and they get that face when they're at the door, the eyes rolling and stuff like that. So it's not a good situation. It's an unstable situation. A lot of the people that we have that come out on the streets are coming out of these types of situations rather than an eviction. And also people are going into shelter out of these situations. And when you look at someone in that case, they most often will tell you that I am homeless. Sometimes they'll use the words, if they're moving from place to place, I'm homeless, I'm on the streets, I have no place to go, I'm from place to place. The language is very similar to what we would hear. And when people say it, we often interpret that as being literally homeless, which means a different thing by definitions. But if someone tells you that they're homeless, certainly that's what they are and how they feel about that situation. And some government departments like education or Department of Health Services would recognize not having your own apartment as being homeless. Now, the Department of Housing and Urban Development does not recognize that as literal homelessness, and instead considers it being at risk of homelessness. And the challenge that we have is that a lot of our services for housing and shelter are funded through the HEARTH Act. Originally started as McKinney-Vento. It was revised in 2009, I believe, as the Homelessness and Emergency Assistance for Rapid Transition to Housing. And the HEARTH Act funds rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and things like that, with the objective of serving people who are in shelters and people who are literally sleeping outside in places not meant for human habitation. Those funds, by law, are not actually designated for people who are in these doubled up, unstable, other types of homeless situations. So as a background, that puts a lot of pressure on the homeless system for people who are in shelters and are on the streets, because people who are doubled up don't have a whole lot of options, especially if they have income, and they're looking for options there and trying to see how they can get into those options. And the language sounds the same. But what we look for at Street Outreach, as I said, we serve people who can't get into shelter, don't want to get into shelter. We serve people who sleep on the street. So if people say, okay, I'm homeless, I'm on the streets, I don't have a place to stay, we accept that that is their situation as they see it. But what we really want to move is to the next level of seeing what does that really mean to them, and what does that mean in terms of a current living situation. Where are they actually sleeping? Where did they sleep last night, the night before that? Where are they sleeping tonight? And those kinds of things. So in Street Outreach, what we look for is where someone is sleeping at night. All of our work is at night. We're out several nights per week, usually 3, 4 different amounts. When it gets colder, we're out more times, and we go out and meet people where they sleep at night. And the world looks a little bit different at night, but there are people out there. And there are a lot of misconceptions, I think, that people have about what we would call unsheltered homelessness, people who are sleeping outside. One thing that people imagine is that there's lots of people out there, that the streets are filled with people who are outside, especially if you look at how many people come to a meal site or use other day services that are around, or what we hear. In actuality, the numbers are not huge. When I first started, we had numbers, we would record like 250 people per year, 300 people per year. But then as we got better at outreach, we realized that a lot of those were connections that our street outreach worker was making during the daytime, who weren't actually outside during the nighttime. As we got better at street outreach, typically in a year, we would get around 150 people that we determined were sleeping outside, and located these people annually. Not through the whole year, that people would be in and out through different times. During COVID, the numbers went down, and last year, our last fiscal year that ended at the end of August, we served under 100 people outside for the first time in quite some years. It was the upper 90s, I think 96 or 98 people that we had met with and determined were outside. And the perception is that people who are outside are there because they can't get into shelter, and they're desperately looking for services and just waiting for someone to come and help them. And it's not like that at all. And in fact, most people, the vast majority of people who we find on the streets do not want to go to shelter, at least initially. And then as the weather gets colder, we talk to them and bring up the topic whenever they seem to be concerned about their situation. But it's very challenging to get people into shelter, and even more surprising to me, into housing. It can take quite some time. The way people are on the streets really isn't what we tend to imagine. Also, people's concern about the streets increases as the cold weather comes in, and people seem to believe that for some reason the numbers go up in the winter. They don't. The numbers go down dramatically. And even now, as we're in October, October is usually the first thinning out month that people who are out in the summer start going off the streets. Most of these are not going into shelter, but are going back into doubled up situations that maybe they had abandoned during the summer and now are building those relationships and going back. And that has already started, even though the cold weather really hasn't gotten here yet. The other interesting thing is, winter, even with the numbers that are lower, we're concerned about people's welfare and people's health. What has actually surprised me is that in the winter, we encounter far fewer people who are sick during outreach of those that are out. And we have never had anyone that we've served suffer from hypothermia or frostbite, thank God, so far. And in some cases, it just amazes me, and I'm seeing them several, sometimes every night when it's that cold. The health conditions don't seem to be quite as bad in the winter as they are in the early spring. March is a miserable month on the street. It's a miserable night for outreach, cold, rain, dampness, lots of respiratory issues and other issues. And in these years I've been doing outreach here in Racine, we were fortunate that we hadn't had anyone die on the streets all those years until COVID started. COVID, the people that we've had who passed away on the streets, one real early while we're still on the Safer at Home order. The second one right after Safer at Home had been ordered. Another one this year up in Milwaukee, but it's someone who we knew. None of these were actually from COVID, but also none of them during the winter. They were in the spring and summer that people passed away from various reasons. So the first message that I would get out of that as we look into winter situations is don't panic because it's winter. There are mechanisms in place, and as street outreach and the shelters, we do handle that and have been able to manage that. One of the things that we do in street outreach when we go out, as it gets colder, if it's in single digits, we are out every night. Street outreach is an all-weather activity. We're out no matter what the weather conditions are, no matter whether it's a holiday. If a street outreach night falls on Christmas or whatever, we go. On whatever the day is, we're out. And the only time that we will cancel street outreach because of weather is for freezing rain. If it's raining and it freezes on the road and the vehicle starts sliding all over the place, we call it off. But we are out in blizzards, in the middle of snowstorms, and you name it, we're out there. And actually, those adverse weather conditions have their own advantages in outreach anyway. We use different strategies when those kind of weather conditions come out. What we do when it's very cold is, on our regular shifts that are out there that we're going to be out as the whole team, the normal team, we do the normal locating people, looking for people and so on. But when it gets dangerously cold and we have an emergency shift, we go to everyone who we know who's outside just to check and see if they're okay, see if they want to go to shelter, load them up with boxes of super warmers and extra blankets and things like that if they don't want to go in. And we have had people in tents through Arctic blasts and things like that we could not get into shelter even for a night, to say, look, we know you don't like shelter. You don't have to live there. We're not saying go in and stay there, but why don't you go tonight maybe and just have a good night's sleep and get out. Oh, I'll be okay. I don't want to do that. That's the way it actually is. So what we do, we go out and we look for people. If people are calling us and want us to meet with them, We do have a street outreach phone. It's on our website. I think it's on the CoC website too, on their page of services. If people call that phone, they will get a voicemail message that our street outreach team listens to as they're preparing their street outreach street plan. And what we're looking for is someone's location. So we ask the person to give us a location where they are, and the street outreach team will go to that location and look for them when they're out. We don't recommend that people be outside. We recommend that if people have friends or family, a place to stay, that they should go there, that really people only stay outside if it's a last resort. So that's what we encourage. Don't stay outside, go stay with people until you can get into shelter if you're on the waiting list or whatever. But if you're actually sleeping outside, then call and tell us where. If you have a spot that you're staying or you're not sure about or whatever, stay at places that you feel safe. As long as nobody hassles you, stay there, and the street outreach team will come out and find you at that spot. What we don't do is take calls and run out saying, oh, I'm at this place, come and meet me here, and run people in. We don't do that. We don't have the capacity to do that. And also it's what we call outreach by appointment. We get a lot of calls, most of whom are not unsheltered. And it's not necessarily that people are trying to trick us or whatever, but people are looking for options. If you imagine that you're doubled up, you're staying with a friend or family member or something, a lot of these calls come in the morning. It's 9 in the morning or whatever, you wake up and the person that you're staying with says, you got to go. You got to be out of here. You can't stay in here. And they might say some nasty words. They may say some nice words, or maybe the person got evicted. It's possible the person you're staying with was evicted. You're not sure where you're going to go. What would you do? You probably panic, and people do panic in those situations. And the words that they'll use is, I'm homeless. I have nowhere to go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no place to sleep. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, that's true. I mean, that really is. But for us in street outreach, that's not a street outreach situation yet, because you're not actually out on the streets. You've got a long time between that morning and nighttime. So what we recommend is, whatever those same thing that you're saying, go and call everybody and try not to be out on the streets. And 99% of the time, those calls that are in the morning don't actually result in someone actually sleeping outside that night. And I have personally answered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those calls, and the numbers that, and we actually, if someone gives us a location, we investigate those locations, we go out there, we find empty cars and rarely find people. And usually what I find, if someone calls and says, that when the people that we find based on calls, they're usually very short messages. Hi, my name's so-and-so, I'm sleeping at this location. And then that's about it. And we go to that location, they don't know we're coming or when we're coming, and we find those cases. The longer the call, the less likely we are, in my experience, to actually find someone outside. And there's certain tells and languages they go there. But what we're actually looking for is the person's current living situation. Where do you sleep at night? And that's where we will go. And we're quite good at doing that. So what we do, as we said, it's for people who can't get in. If you're on a waiting list, we say double up and keep doing what you're doing. If you can get out, if you're outside, we will go. We will make sure that people are safe and warm and don't have frostbite or whatever until they can get into shelter or housing or whatever. And we can take people to shelter if we find them and really find that they're in a situation that isn't working for them and they need to go into shelter. Once we locate someone, yes.
That's a perfect segue in for me to get the other shelters on. And
okay.
Then we'll do some question and answers at the end when we're done.
Okay.
Lots of information here. I know, lots of information. So I'm going to call on Shabraya, and Shabraya is on our leadership council for the CoC, and she's also representing the Safe Haven. So she's going to just give us a brief discussion about or brief description of how people or who they serve at Safe Haven and how they can end up at the shelter, just so you're familiar with what it takes to get into the youth shelter. Shabraya.
Hi, everyone. As Teresa said, I'm Shabraya Small. I am the shelter manager I have been for the last 5 years, but I've been with Safe Haven for 6. I used to do all of their outreach. So this is a perfect thing for me to do, be able to give you all this information. So Safe Haven serves youth ages 10 to 17. They can stay with us for a maximum of 3 weeks. So typically for the state, it's 2 weeks, but we usually can go by the Fed's timeline of 3 weeks. So if it's necessary, we will do 3 weeks for the youth to stay. They receive, obviously, the food, the clothing. We do have a clothing room for youth who do not have any clothes, or parents who, aren't sending clothes with their youth. We do have a clothing room for them to kind of go and shop in. While the youth is here, they are assigned a case manager. The case manager does all of their family sessions with them. And so we do family mediation and trying to, get the youth and the parent to some middle ground where they are, going to a different environment going home. The goal for us here is reunification. So we try to do that within the 3 weeks that they're here. We do work in individual sessions with the youth. When we do have more than one youth, we do work in group sessions, kind of based on the reasons that they're here. So we do coping skills, different communication skills, things like that. Youth mostly come to us through RPD. Sometimes they've had some type of, crisis going on at home. So we get, calls from dispatch, and we typically will ask a number of questions to see if the youth qualifies to come to Safe Haven. The only thing that would disqualify youth from coming to Safe Haven is a youth that is getting out of jail, a youth that is on an ankle bracelet, and youth that are in foster care, as well as youth that those are it, as well as youth that are in foster care. So that's how we get a lot of our youth to Safe Haven. We do also sometimes get calls from social workers or counselors at the schools, the middle schools and high schools, and we'll talk with them about, what they're seeing with the youth and how we can, assist. Sometimes the youth, because we are a voluntary facility, sometimes the youth may not want to stay with us, but they'll receive services through us. So they can still receive family mediation services, individual services. They can come over and we can just kind of talk and, I've had one youth where she was a little bit more where you can just talk with her and do other things with her, engage with her, and that will kind of keep her mind off of things that she was not supposed to do. So we get a little bit creative with our methods here. I think typically we see, I would say, the age 15, 16, and 17 a lot. That age category, it's kind of like they are, really kind of getting into their teen years. They're feeling a little bit more independent. They want to gain some more independency. And so that creates a lot of tension with the parents. Sometimes it's just too much to bear where the youth and the parent needs to be separated. So typically the youth will come to us. I think that's about it for us.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, I want to call on Jory Chambers. She's with Women's Resource Center. She's going to give us an update on how women come to the shelter and who they serve. So, Jory.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure I'm using a headphone. So Women's Resource Centers serves those fleeing domestic violence. It's anybody over the age of 18, any gender, any sexual orientation, doesn't matter. Anyone serving or fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking. Residents of WRC are experiencing homelessness as a result of needing to flee a domestic violence situation or abusive situation. So they're usually not homeless, then come in, they're usually homeless as a result of the fleeing. Individuals call the crisis line. Sorry, my phone's ringing, of course. Individuals call the crisis line who are in any of the above listed situations. And the advocate would screen the call And if they fit our program, they would bring them in to receive services. We do provide outreach services as well. So even if you're in a domestic violence situation but not experiencing homelessness, we can still help. We do not have a wait list, and the only 24-hour stipulation we have is that once you're approved for shelter, we only hold the bed for a 24-hour period. We also work with Racine Police Department with the LAP program, which is a lethality assessment program that kind of depicts the severity of the domestic violence. And then we would screen the client still and bring them in if they fit our program, the same way as we would if anybody else were to call. We have to talk to the person that needs services. I think that's it. I don't really have anything else.
Did you mention you serve men?
Yeah, I said we
situations?
serve anybody.
Okay.
So we do serve men. We serve women, men, any gender, any sexual orientation. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Of course, thank you.
And next I want to call on Kristen. Where are you, Kristen?
I'm right here.
Kristen Chaffee. Kristen is the director of the Burlington Transitional Living Center. And so Kristen, if you can give us a idea of the people that you serve and how they get to your shelter for services.
Sure. So we are the homeless shelter for the western end of the county. So we typically serve, Burlington, Waterford, Union Grove. Somewhat about 12% of the people that come to the shelter are also coming from the, which be the eastern end then of Walworth County, and kind of the western end of Kenosha County. They're off of Highway 50. We serve women and children. However, we do place men in hotels, or women and men who are together, couples or families in hotels, or refer them obviously to other shelters. Currently, we are operating at COVID status, which is significantly lower than what we are used to. Our shelter is not very big to begin with. Our capacity is about 20. However, with COVID, we can only have 4 families here, whatever that would be, whether that would be 4 single women, or, any makeup of, 4 women and whatever children they have, because we've had to separate our bedrooms into 4 different quadrants. So that's been kind of a struggle the last year. So we have relied a lot on hotels since last March. We've been paying them, pretty much out of our budget. I believe in the last fiscal year, we spent $11,000 on hotels. And since July 1st of this year, we're at about $3,900. So having the, restrictions of COVID, which obviously I completely understand, has, brought on expenses that, we're not used to. Our referrals come from a variety of sources, anywhere from rural healthcare to a psychiatric hospital, probation and parole, local organizations such as Love Incorporated. A family member may call on behalf of the person themselves, may call. We're not only getting calls from the western end, we're getting calls from the city of Racine, from Milwaukee, Chicago. We've had a significant amount of calls from out of state individuals in the last month or so. Our name probably doesn't do us justice, because people do think that we are a transitional housing program. So we are getting a lot of people that want to, move to Wisconsin or move to this area and are hoping to get into transitional housing. Unfortunately, we don't have that here. So, once we get the referral, obviously we, if we have room, at the time, you know, we can bring them in if they meet our qualifications. For shelter, if not, again, we put them in hotels or try to find them shelter, whether that would be, you know, closer to the county that they may be coming from, or a place where they already have supports. Using Here to Help is something that we've been doing a lot lately, hoping they can possibly get into Halo if that's an option. And I would say more than not during this time, we have been trying to encourage people to stay where they're at. Because, and I'm talking about the people that aren't considered literally homeless. We have one woman and her child that we're working with now that is living with her mom and stepdad. Stepdad wants them out. He works third shift and he can't handle the 3-year-old and the crying at bedtime and that, you know, kind of the whole family dynamics. And of course, at the time that she called us, she didn't have a job. And so we kind of put her in our financial program, working with her now that she has employment, paying a little bit to stay there, you know, trying to use every resource that we can to keep them in the environment that they are because of the situation with lack of shelter, you know, with COVID restrictions and that. So we're trying to be very creative with keeping them in their current environment. Might not always be the best situation, but you know, with lack of resources right now, that's what we're doing. Our program is kind of based off of, you know, a lot of the things that Halo does. We have a financial program. We manage all of their medications. We have a transportation program. We have faith support group. We have someone that works with them with employment. Of course, you know, we make sure that they follow all guidelines of their probation. We work with school counselors, their therapists, their doctors. We kind of believe that you have to address every issue that they're dealing with and kind of be involved in that to break down, you know, communication barriers, you know, to have positive networking and you know, good support there if we're all working together for the same purpose and the same goal. And so I think our program's pretty extensive. We don't have a time limit on how long they can stay at the shelter. Originally, there was somewhat of a 30-60 day program when I first started 11 years ago. We have found that isn't realistic at all. I mean, many of them aren't on the medications they should be. They are, you know, maybe going through court procedures. They need to be on Social Security disability. They don't have a job. They don't have a car. You know, I mean, you name it, the list is long. You guys all know that. And so 30 to 60 days was unrealistic, not only because of all that, but because there is lack of low-income housing available. We're finding even if they have an income and have money saved, the apartments that they can afford aren't there. We're even struggling with finding apartments for those that are on Section 8 who have vouchers. So staying at the shelter is obviously a lot longer because of that as well. My belief is if they're working the program and they're meeting their goals, there's always something else we can work on to better them because obviously we don't want them to return to homelessness. So we keep them here. So our days of stay have obviously increased significantly, but it's kind of necessary, I believe, at least for our program out here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to call on Holly Anderly. Holly is our new director for the Halo shelter. So Holly, you're up. Talk to us about how people get to you.
Okay. So you heard a lot about the situation from Scott. He really set us up really well for this. So a couple of ways that people get to Halo, and I'm going to apologize for the flooring noise in the background. I can't stop that today. People come to us through street outreach first, And through the police, law enforcement, oftentimes police officers will find somebody that self-reports as being on the street homeless. If they're brought in by street outreach, by Department of Corrections, by law enforcement, they come into shelter, they're automatically admitted. There's no quote 24-hour hold. They're in. We deal with them just like we would anybody else. They see a case manager within 24 hours, and we move them on into what they need to be successful. We do the same intake. The other way that somebody can get in is through Here to Help. We've gotten a lot of referrals from Here to Help recently, and we get those in. We call those the face sheets. And Jeanette over here goes ahead and she gets in touch with the people. Usually there's a cell phone number or telephone number where we can reach them, and we get in touch with them and we find out what their needs are. Is it a family? Is it a single man, a single woman? Do the assessment, see if they qualify, if they are actually category 1 homeless, which means that they don't have a place to stay at all. They are living in a place that's not meant for human habitation. We get them right in. We are not currently really housing people in motels except for our families. We normally we would have 120 bed capacity. However, because of COVID, we're operating at about a 50% capacity, which means we've got 30 beds in the women and family side and 30 beds in the men's side. And we like to keep our families together. We like to keep them intact. So we have family rooms that are available. So if we have a family that is homeless, category 1 homeless, they need emergency shelter, and we do not have a family room available, that we will put them up in the hotel for the night until we can move them into shelter. It's not so much a hotel voucher thing as it is we just don't have the space always to do things the way that we want to do them. So if someone comes out and says, oh, Halo's giving hotel vouchers, that's not so much. It's really just to try to increase our space until we've got this place to put the families in an intact situation. So then people can also self-refer. And so someone can come to Halo and can say, I'm on the street, I have no place to stay. We'll ask them some of the same questions that Scott's asked. Where did you sleep last night? That's the big one. Where did you sleep last night? And if the answer to that is, well, I slept on my brother's couch, we're going to try the diversionary tactic of, well, could you sleep on your brother's couch again tonight? Could you stay there a while? What's the barrier to you staying with your brother? If the barrier is, well, I can't give him anything for food, well, we might be able to work with that. Maybe we can give him a food card, you know, a Piggly Wiggly card or something that will make the brother a little bit more amenable to keeping him on the couch. If that doesn't work and we've got the space, then we take them in. Like everybody's saying, we need to try the diversionary tactics first, because clearly people do, in most cases, a lot better if they're able to be in an environment that is a home. But for some folks, they've got to have that shelter, in which case they're brought in. We have our case managers do the intake, and we assess what their needs are. They are educational needs, are their medical needs. And we try to take care of the urgent ones first. Clearly, we'll get them set up with medication, get them set up with medical exams, whatever we need to do. And the list is long and varied. We believe in treating people with dignity and respect. Everybody's a human. We try to make them welcome. We try to help them feel that this is a home, get them to take responsibility for a few things at a time. We give them small goals to achieve. Some folks are in just because their living situation disappeared. You know, oh, I was renting a house or I was renting an apartment and the landlord sold the building and I had 30 days to find a new place and I couldn't find a new place. And so I had no place to go. Those folks are generally fairly easy to move out, but I will echo what everybody else is saying. We have a significant lack of affordable housing in this community, especially 1-bedroom apartments. And it does not always work to double people up. It sounds like a great idea. Let's get two homeless folks together and have them rent an apartment together. They can support each other and, you know, be there and encourage. That doesn't always work out so well. But we do try that sometimes. So we do need that. Halo is a very low barrier shelter. We cannot take registered sex offenders. But apart from that, we pretty much will take everybody. We do have a couple of people right now who are, and I hate the word banned, but we've had a couple of folks we've had to ask to leave because of violence. We've got one gentleman that had a situation where we've told him, well, you can come back, but you've got to show us that you're getting some mental health help to address the issues that caused you to be threatening to our staff. So it's not a question of we're not ever going to let somebody back, or we're not doing this 3-month ban, 6-month ban, 1-year ban thing. Folks just need to be able to show us that they're doing something or they're taking some steps to make it possible for them to live in a congregate living environment. I could go on and on forever about Halo, but does anybody have any questions I can address? Okay. Then I think I'm
we can
done. I'm always here. Feel free to call me anytime. You know, Halo is still suffering from perceptions in the community that are not true anymore. I hear it all the time about how we drug test, or we don't take this, or we don't take that, or we do this. I had one the other day that I heard somebody got kicked out of Halo because they didn't pay their rent. We don't charge rent, folks. But anyway, if you have any questions or concerns, please get a hold of me or one of my terrific staff. Jean? You're muted.
Sorry. One of the questions that has arisen recently is the whole socialization question. And we live right across from the Y, and there are people constantly coming, and all they're doing is sitting under the roof entrance and trying to enjoy one another. Because apparently, I have not gone over there to talk with them, but the question becomes, is this another need that the shelter community needs to address? It seems with the COVID deal, you know, people have become more and more isolated. They have become, you know, really looking for the joy of talking with the other people, etc. So could you address that a little bit?
I can address that from the Halo standpoint. Our folks that are in Halo, they're not required to leave during the day right now during COVID.
Oh.
Our folks can stay in the shelter, and they and many of them do. Some of them can't wait to get out of here in the morning and go where they're going. But we've got a lot of folks that are sitting and watching TV, having coffee together. So it's not a requirement for our folks to leave right now. But I am sure you understand we can't have folks that aren't in shelter come in and socialize a lot, because we can't risk COVID being brought in. But our folks can stay here.
Okay, that's a wonderful clarification.
Thank you.
I just like to add, for us out on the western end as well, we've never had the policy where they had to leave during the day. They're always allowed to stay here. The TV's not allowed to be on, though. They do have to be working or at a meeting or, you know, trying to find a job. But we don't allow anybody up here that isn't like program related. Like
Right.
their friends aren't coming up here to socialize with them. Family members, you know, they have to give certain notice and can only be up here a certain amount of time. No men are allowed up here. So yeah, we don't have, you know, we try to bring volunteers in to do a lot of things for socialization for them. They play bingo on Friday nights. They come up, like different things like that. but we also encourage them to get out into the community and do what the community is doing. So yeah, we don't have just anybody come in here either to kind of interact with our clients or just to hang out during the day, because we're trying to run a program, even though this is their house. And yes, if they're at their own apartment, they could have people over and kind of do their own thing. And we kind of always tell them to do that, because I mean, even like our 10 o'clock curfew, which many are in long before that, they have their last cigarette and they always joke that they can't wait to be able to go out in the middle of the night and have a cigarette. And I'm like, you know what, when you're able to do that, give me a call, because that would be great, because you know that means you made it to your own apartment. But so yeah, I just wanted to put it out there too, that we don't have, you know, just people out or in kind of hanging out as well.
Right. And I do want to clarify, our folks are out looking for jobs. They are out looking for apartments. They are doing those kinds of things. What I meant to say is, you know, they've got the wherewithal to sit and have a cup of coffee and take some time to have a break and to socialize, but they are participating in programs. And I watched one young man sitting at the table the other day, very studiously working on some kind of an educational project. I don't know what he was doing, and I didn't want to interrupt him to ask, but he was spread out all over the table working on something. So, so yeah, I wanted to echo that Kristen said.
Thank you.
But thank you all for your community support of Halo. We really appreciate it. We've got some big dreams and hopes going forward, and I'm looking forward to working with you all on some of that.
Thank you. Seth, can you give us a couple minutes or just a very brief, people are have the ability to gather at the hospitality center for meal, or are you open or not?
Yep. So we have been open since June in person for meals inside. So we do have a limited capacity at tables. There's about 45 chairs that are available for meals. We've been reaching that capacity here in the last few weeks. And so that kind of overflow folks are sent out with a meal at 11:30. We, you know, are continuing to watch COVID. You know, once kind of city health metrics and stuff indicate that it would be safer to have more people inside, then we'd certainly look forward to doing so. We're open from 7:30 to 1:30 currently, and then once it gets colder, we'll extend that at least to 2:30.
Thank you. Thank you. So the next thing that I want to work on is session 2, which is talking about some of the prevention that we have working through. And I'm going to ask Elizabeth Steinbaugh from Legal Action Wisconsin to give us a little bit of a summary of what they're seeing with the eviction moratorium having ended. So Elizabeth, welcome.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I'm going to preface by saying that I have a very aggressive kitten right here, and so apologies in advance, but she will not be dissuaded this morning. I'm so sorry. So I am a staff attorney with Legal Action of Wisconsin. We're a nonprofit civil legal aid law firm that covers Racine, Kenosha, and Walworth counties. I do housing for all 3 counties. So I've been very busy for the last 19 months. In the beginning days, I guess the first few months of the eviction moratorium, obviously, I think patience was a lot stronger. People were a lot more sort of scared. And so in the beginning, honestly, we really saw a drop in evictions. I would say in the beginning, we maybe saw some landlords that were uneducated, but then for quite a while, you know, really nothing was moving through the courts. I will say that the way that the local judges reacted was, rather than, you know, stopping eviction filings or you know, dismissing cases, what they would do is they would allow that first return date to happen, and then they would just set out, they would adjourn that return date for the end of the eviction moratorium. So I have some clients where their first filing was back in, you know, 2020, sometimes even 2019, depending on, how long cases would take to be scheduled, and their case would just get kicked out again and again and again and again. So obviously that's really stressful for tenants. That's stressful for the court system, and then also, I just personally feel that it sort of undermines the intention of the moratorium, because once tenants have an eviction filing, even if that case is ultimately dismissed or resolved in some way that is sort of beneficial or at least benign to both parties, for a lot of folks, even if they have an eviction filing on their record, it makes it really difficult for them to find a place to rent. As the moratorium progressed, I was seeing a lot of 28-day notices. I felt like landlords were sort of wising up. They couldn't evict people for breaches of their lease, non-payments of rent, but they could give them 28-day notices. And that was a big bulk of the work that I did for quite a while. And those were allowed to go through the system. So the eviction moratorium did not keep everyone from being evicted. And I will say, particularly for low-income tenants, 7 times out of 10, maybe even 8 times out of 10, they're on a month-to-month lease. They're not on, a year-long lease. So they don't have those protections. So there were still plenty of people who were being evicted and then finding it really difficult to find a place to live because other people weren't moving out because of the moratorium. So since the end of the moratorium, I think, as everyone would expect, the referrals that we have gotten have really skyrocketed. So we have an intake unit as part of legal action. So if someone calls legal action, they call a centralized unit, and they're going to speak with an attorney or a paralegal immediately who can give them sort of basic legal advice. And then depending on their situation, they will get passed off to attorneys in different offices. So they'll make their way to me if they live in Racine, Kenosha, or Walworth counties. And I would say during the pandemic, I was averaging maybe 5 to 7 calls per week, and I'm now getting sometimes 5 to 7 referrals per day. So it's really skyrocketed. And those notices have shifted from 28-day notices. I still got plenty of those, but they really shifted to the breach of lease, failure to pay rent notices. Anecdotally, I will say that a lot of times those notices are for significantly more rent than there have been in the past. So generally, right, a landlord's not going to put up with a tenant not paying rent for months and months and months at a time. Well, now, because tenants did have the eviction moratorium protection, I'm finding clients who owe thousands of dollars in rent, maybe thousands of dollars in utility bills. And so that puts them in a position where their landlord is probably pretty annoyed and not as willing to negotiate with them or with me. And if they are evicted, they're going to end up with this huge damages judgment. Fortunately, with WERA, the amount of money that can be paid in emergency rental assistance is much higher. But again, anecdotally, I'm finding a lot of times with these landlords, they're just sort of done with this system. They'd almost rather, walk away and not accept the emergency rental assistance. They just want the tenants out. And so we're ending up with these tenants who really have nowhere to go, and they just owe tons and tons of money. I think another challenge when it comes to WERA is because the pandemic has been, going on for so long that, previously with emergency rental assistance, I would have clients that would say, oh, I was home health aide. I was someone who worked in customer service, and my place of employment shut down because of COVID. And now so many of those, sort of frontline jobs are back up and running. And so the connection between income loss and COVID is more tenuous. And so I think it's harder for them to apply for emergency rental assistance. I get creative, but, we do the best that we can. So, the shift from 28-day notices to 5-day notices for breach of the lease, certainly an increased number of people with much more money that they owe. I'm finding judges, honestly, are pretty mixed. I think that some judges are still being pretty lenient, and some judges are still doing Zoom hearings, which are so much better for my clients. I think some judges are really trying to get back to business as usual. And aren't maybe as receptive to the COVID argument as I would like for them to be. The other thing I'm noticing is sort of earlier at the end of the eviction moratorium, I could still count on if a client got a notice and then ultimately that proceeded to a summons and complaint, they would have maybe several more weeks in their unit. And for some clients, right, the most important thing is that roof over their head. And so they'll take the court filing, they just need a safe place to stay. I would normally tell clients, 2 to 3 weeks before a return date. That was stretched out sort of at the end of the eviction moratorium because the courts were catching up. And I am finding now that that's back to normal. So if someone gets a summons and complaint, that date's probably going to be in just a couple weeks. And then sort of the other trend that I'm seeing is, my clients who are getting 28-day notices, who are willing to leave, who are trying to leave, they are being told by, potential apartments that there's nothing available until November, December, or January. The stock just isn't there. And then another trend that I'm seeing is a lot of the smaller landlords, private landlords that were maybe more willing to take a chance on a tenant who had an eviction on the record, or maybe, not a perfect financial background. They're getting out of the landlord business altogether. They're selling their houses or their, small apartment buildings, and that's making it even tougher for people to find housing. Okay, I think that I've gone on long enough. I'm happy to answer any questions. The very, very short version is, it's not great. Nobody's surprised by that.
Okay, so before we take questions, I want to make sure we get to everybody. So I'm going to ask Jody Arnold to give a little bit. Thank you, Elizabeth, on what Jody is seeing and hearing through the calls that come through from LSS. She'll give us a bit of update on that, and then Carrie Milkey will come on and talk about what's going on through Here to Help and how they're working through the eviction or the at-risk prevention programming. I know we're running a little behind on time, but we will do the best we can, because we do want to make sure we get to the end of talking about our cold weather. We have Vicki Selko and Kristen Lattis from the city and the county to talk about that briefly. So Jody, if you could give us a bit of an update of what you're hearing and seeing from LSS.
Yeah, thanks, Teresa. Elizabeth pretty well covered a lot of the same sorts of issues that we're running into. The main thing being, and it's been echoed before, is just the ability to find housing for people. We have no shortage of clients with vouchers and, people to connect with to get vouchers for programs like TBRA, rapid rehousing. But then we run into the barrier of, once they get the voucher, there's such limited one bedrooms, especially. And I'm sure other programs have the same challenge, that not only is it just finding housing, but it has to be housing within fair market rates. So then you're even further limited by, how much you can spend for a client. So that's been a big challenge for us. And then on the prevention side of things, for the programs that I'm still personally working that aren't necessarily in Racine, but close enough by, we're starting to see more clients reaching out again for rental assistance help. And it's a lot of folks that are employed, but now underemployed. They had a job that they lost maybe last year during the height of the pandemic, round one, and did manage to get a job, but now that job doesn't pay as much, and they're struggling to keep paying their rent at the rate that they at one time had been able to more comfortably pay. And, being faced with the reality that at some point they may have to relocate, and that's not easy. So that's, kind of all of the things that I'm sure all of us are dealing with. But yeah, it's been a real challenge lately.
Thank you.
See you later.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, Carrie. And they're here to help.
So Here to Help was born out of the pandemic. So we've been in operation, obviously, more than a year. And our primary focus is just to ensure that people within Racine County can access their needed services. And so that's grown and morphed as the pandemic has changed things and as we've been able to do some other stuff. So real quick, just a reminder to folks that we don't just deal with housing or prevention. We also can help anybody with about anything. We do advocacy for systems, so we can, help you figure out why your, child support order is the way it is. Get answers to questions that maybe are difficult for people in other systems or to get through to those systems. We do advocacy and referral. And we do 30, 60, and 90-day follow-ups with every single client that calls us to ensure that they've gotten their needs met. So during the pandemic, at one point, Halo requested that we assist them in taking referrals just to numbers and the fact that they had, the facility was different. They had people moved out, et cetera, et cetera. We continue to do that for them. So Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, we do the pre-screen for Halo and send the information over. And we continue to do that. So the other part of our work is obviously looking at eviction prevention, and we work with any number of families and that have during the pandemic were just simply behind in rent and wanted some assistance in getting caught up. We work with WIRA to coordinate dollars so that if they've maxed out on one, they can take a look at what we have. But we also try to look at the issues that brought them to this current situation, whether that's a budgeting issue, an underemployment issue, an employment issue, some concerns with Social Security, disability, medical reasons, all of those kind of things. We have a close working relationship, obviously, with all the departments within the county, as well as a number of agencies, so we can get answers relatively quickly for folks that call us. So I don't want to harp on what everybody else is saying because it's the same. Our biggest issue at this point is finding housing and housing that individuals can afford on a long-term basis. Does no good to put somebody in something that they just aren't able to maintain for a long period of time. And so we don't have any secret recipe for that. Although folks call us and say, can you just put me in housing now? And I'm like, you've got to make the calls. So we do a lot of that. We do a lot of negotiating with landlords so that they don't get to the point where perhaps somebody's being evicted. We do a lot of one-on-one work with folks that come to our attention on what they need to change in order to do that. So we have both social work and paraprofessionals that are on staff here. And so we have a lot of expertise in systems and a lot of expertise in dealing with difficult individuals. So overall, that's what we do.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I think we can take about 5 minutes worth of questions. I want to give for anybody here, and I'm having trouble with my viewing of my people. So let's see if I can do the gallery. There we go. Does anybody have any questions that they would like to address to anybody? And we'll keep it kind of short. Each of these people that have spoken have given us a lot of information, and we can certainly bring them back to talk again in the new year.
So this is Dolores with Housing Authority of Racine County. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I don't have a question other than I just want to make an announcement. Everyone's talking about the difficulty that we're finding that clients are out there difficulty finding a 1-bedroom unit. I just want to let everybody know that we on our end are having the same issues. You know, vouchers are being handed out and then they're having to expire because they can't find the 1-bedrooms or the 2-bedrooms within the price range that, you know, that they would need for a voucher. But we are really strongly encouraging people to, if they are working and if they have, if they can work at all, this will really help with their voucher, because just to say our voucher is $866 for a 2-bedroom, and if they're working, they can contribute some of that, their working income, so that way they can afford an apartment that's maybe $1,000 or maybe $1,100. So that really helps the person in order to, you know, get a voucher. We are also in partnership with Carrie with Here to Help. We have vouchers. We have vouchers. I'm letting people know right here and now. The issue is you can hand them out all day, but if you don't have anywhere for them to move, they can't find a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom, and then what happens is their voucher ends up expiring, and we then they don't end up using their voucher. That's some of the challenges we're having here too. So if you know of anybody, that a landlord or any landlord who typically doesn't rent to units, maybe encouraging people that you know in the community or the landlord association, hey, take on housing, you know, even if it's for a short period of time. And we have the vouchers, we have them that we probably have at least 100 vouchers that we're not using right now. So we have foster care, the foster youth. If your age is 18 to 24, if you ever were in foster care, we can give you a voucher up to 36 months. And if you're income eligible after the 36 months, you could get a regular voucher. We also have VASH. VASH is for veterans, and VASH are limitless at this time. So if you know of anybody who is a veteran who is homeless or at risk of being homeless, you know, let us know and we can get them start that referral process. We also have our Ms5 vouchers where they're at risk of being homeless or they are homeless. They can get a voucher as well. If you're between the ages of 18 to 62 and you have a disability, you would be eligible for a voucher as well. So all those groups that are voucher eligible, please send a referral to Carrie and her staff. And you know, if it gets to be too much and you just want to send a referral, especially Halo, those that are sleeping in tents or on the floor. I think Seth spoke a little bit about that. People who are at the extreme and are homeless, send those vouchers, whether it's to Here to Help or you could send it directly to us here at the Housing Authority, and we'll try to assist those people into getting into some units. But that's become the challenge that everyone's talking about, is there aren't the units out there. There's a significant amount of vouchers out there. They're the units aren't out there to support the vouchers that are out there floating around right now. So that becomes a challenge, and that's what I've heard from everybody today. So if you know of anybody or any landlord wants to come on program, let us know.
Very good, thank you.
Teresa?
Yes.
This is Sharon Pease from Center for
Hi,
Veterans
Sharon.
Issues. We are finding, of course, the same thing everybody else is. And I'm on the Balance of State Committee for Landlord Engagement. And out of Madison, they've created an app where landlords can go to the app and put their availability of apartments and units on this app. And it's moving forward, but the problem is there also that there's a lack of landlords who have available apartments. So it seems to be certainly a statewide issue that everyone is talking about. And we're trying to figure out why and how in this landlord engagement. And it's a real conundrum. We don't really know what's going on. So it's not just us, it's everybody in the state, and it may be nationwide that there's just not the units available. So if this landlord engagement committee comes up with any wonderful ideas, I'll certainly pass it on to this group.
I am in the process of investigating an internet connection, app connection that could be worked on by case managers and between case managers and landlords to help clients that are working through PSH, rapid rehousing, and the shelters through our housing navigator and case managers to have a listing of what apartments are open, what their rent is, what the restrictions are as far as no pets or it's only 1 bedroom or whatever, which ones are accessible, and which program they participate in, such as rapid rehousing, rent assistance, housing vouchers, those types of things. But that's still in the talking stages. So you're absolutely right, and we are working in that direction as well. So thank you for raising that. Okay, I am going to call now on Kristen Lattis. Kristen is with Racine County, and she is going to speak to us a bit about warming centers and shelters, warming centers for the cold weather. And I just want to put this out there that warming centers are not meant for just homeless people. Think of it like in the summer, if it's really hot and you have no air conditioning, but you're not homeless. You could go to different sites, the library when they're open, the mall, to help you cool down. So we want to make sure we know that distinction and that people understand that. And then the warming centers for the winter would run similar. So they're not just for people who are, the shelters are not running as warming centers. So Kristen, if you want to go ahead and take it away, and then we'll hear from Vicki Selko for the city after.
Sure.
Kristen.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. And I know that Hope Otto had connected with Vicki, but from the county's end of things, we will function as we have in the last few years. Our building here at Taylor Avenue will remain open as a warming shelter. So that is a site that individuals can come during the day. And, you know, last year we served coffee and had areas. We also have face masks, things like that for individuals coming into the building. Still certainly taking COVID precautions and ensuring that there's space and enough space so that people can be here safely. I will say it was not heavily utilized last year, but we certainly are happy to partner. You know, if people have questions, again, I know Carrie's still on here, but you know, any of that information that people need certainly can also call here to help for information, and we'll continue to partner to support the warming shelters and whatever other assistance that we need to do once it starts to get cold. I think we've been a little spoiled because it's been so incredibly lovely.
Well, I like to say last year for Halloween, didn't we have snow and rain on Halloween?
Isn't it crazy?
Oh my gosh. So I'm happy with this weather. Let me just say, I don't want to wreck karma. So
I know.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so that's good. What about for out in the Burlington area? Is there...
So I know we actually have a meeting next week to further explore that.
Okay, if you just then forward that information on to us, and we will get that out to the members and put it on our website nice and early. That's why we decided October rather than November. So much appreciated, Kristen. Thank you.
You bet.
Next time I'm going to call on Vicki. Let's see, Vicki, you should be able to share your screen.
Great. Good morning.
Oops, nope. There we go. Oh, great. Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be able to share with you some information on the city's warming centers for this winter. I will send this flyer around to everyone. We're going to add all of the times to this, but the city this year, all of our community centers will be open with certain hours for warming center purposes when it gets below 25 degrees. So all of our community centers and the library, and we also have confirmed that the Regency Mall and Target again will function as warming centers for those who need it as well. So again, all of the city's community centers will have hours open to folks. We're also considering and would be interested in feedback whether this was useful or not. I think 2 years ago, we did dedicate some funding to make bus service free to all the warming centers. I'd be interested to hear whether that was utilized or effective or found helpful by folks. We certainly could consider doing that again. We would have to take that funding proposal through council for approval. But if there's interest or if folks thought that that was helpful for people needing access to these warming centers, we could certainly consider doing that again. But I will, we'll be updating this flyer to add all of the specific hours for each location. And this information will also be, of course, shared with 211, so folks can get access to it there as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Seth.
Yeah, thanks. So just in response, Vicky, to your question about whether it's useful or would be helpful, I can't speak to whether or not it's actually used prior, but I do know being able to offer something as an option to say that at least it reduces the barrier. So whether or not people use it, the message being, yes, it's available and we're truly making the effort to be able to get you there is something I think we should encourage. So I would be, yeah, in support of seeing that come through council if possible.
Great, thanks, Seth.
Are there any other comments? I'm going to put this into the bigger screen here, if I can. Okay. So at this time, are there any questions for any of the groups? We have about maybe 10 minutes worth we could do, and then we can go ahead and do our agency updates as well.
I have a question. This is Tamara Patton. How do you like advertise the warming centers? Because I don't remember seeing a lot of it until somebody just happened to post something in like a Friends of the Homeless group or things like that. Like, do we send them out to businesses? Do we, send a flyer home to the school system? Things like that, so that it's getting out in that respect.
We post them on our website when we get them.
But like, not businesses are not looking there though, I guess.
Oh,
I don't
right,
know.
right.
I'm just trying to think of, where can we send these out so that they would get the most impact and be seen? Because just speaking as a community member, I had a lot of people just writing on Facebook pages, where can I send people? Where, what are these places about? How can we get people services? And so like, and I'm not saying that you don't all put stuff out there, because people do need to go look, but like just in general, like, where do we put this stuff out?
So last year,
just from the city's perspective, just to say real quickly, I mean, we will do, as we've done before, we'll do a press release, and the Journal Times and other media generally covers that. So we will do that. We also certainly will put a shareable graphic on Facebook and likely Instagram too, and that gets shared from the city's page, the mayor's page, our public health department, our Parks and Rec, and our community centers and library will also certainly post this at those locations as well, and share that on their social media also.
I think 211 also receives the city information and the county information. Between that and Here to Help and the websites. Kristen, I see you nodding. Is that?
Yeah, I would say that those are all the same things that we're doing from the county end. We can also reach out to the school district and just share that information. I can reach out to the director of student services, and that can be shared broadly with principals and school counselors and social workers.
So last year too, Here to Help and all the county Facebook pages shared the warming center information, not just ours, but the cities as well. It gets put into one nice graphic, and we shoot that out. We'll do that again this year, and then we email it out to our partner agencies as well. So we'll be doing that again this year. If you haven't, you should like those pages. So you should like the city's page. You should like the Here to Help page or any of the county sites. Should those graphics and the access to services all gets posted on those, and I encourage people to wildly share those.
Yes, and we have a Facebook page as well. So you're absolutely right. Sharing those, passing it along, word of mouth, you name it.
In the past, United Way of Racine County has posted that as well, and those shareable graphics were just incredible. So thank you.
Very good. Any other questions, comments? So I'm going to call on Sharon. Sharon Pease. Where are you? Are you there?
Hi, I'm here.
Sharon has some announcements to make.
I do have a couple. One of them is very sad, and some of you may be aware of this, but for those of us who have been doing this for a very long time, you may remember Bill Skilbaugh. Bill Skilbaugh passed away yesterday. He was ill for a while, and he will be sorely missed. He was certainly a friend and an advocate of this group. He was one of the founding fathers, so to speak, of HAC when it first started. And he was my mentor, of course. So those of you that knew him can send prayers to the family, if you would, please. The other announcement is that I am definitely retiring in January. So I may have only one more meeting to attend. They are not going to be filling my position. They're going to be dividing my duties among the case managers in the office. So there will be some new faces that will be showing up here, hopefully, when I'm gone. And I just want to say, over the almost 22 years I've been doing this, this group has been an amazing group of people. The work that you all do, the people that you reach, the compassion, and the true, genuine care has been amazing. It has taught me a lot. It has helped me a lot. And I know that you will continue to do great things. So this is not my farewell swan speech, so to speak, but I just want to tell everyone that all of you, I have enjoyed working with you, knowing you, and being part of this group. So thank you very much.
And with her leaving, we have a gap. We do not have a treasurer. We have Mary Beth taking both positions, and we will not have a vice president. So we will need to be thinking along the lines of not that Sharon can easily be replaced, but the position can be easily filled, hopefully. So just letting you know about that. You should have received, and thank you, Sharon, for all of your hard work with everything that you've been doing with the veterans and with homelessness over the years. We much appreciated.
Thank you.
And you should have received an updated announcement from, oh my gosh, I cannot think of the name now. It's the baby shower for Forward, and you should have received a baby shower notice, baby gift giveaway. I don't see him on here. Let me see.
It's Eugene from Molina, isn't it?
Eugene, yes, yes.
He was earlier.
He was, but he's not here now. So please check your packet. I've also placed it on our website, Racine CoC.org. So please check that out. It's coming up, I think, this weekend, and it's free giveaway. It's a drive-through for people to get. I don't remember if they need to register or not. So please check that out. Any other agency announcements or updates of events or programming coming through?
This is Sharon again. I just wanted to say that CBI and SSVF still has funding for veterans housing. We've been doing and increasing our prevention. So any veteran that you know, send them our way, and we can certainly help them. This office covers about 6 different counties. So we're doing a lot of prevention these days. So please continue to send your vets to us.
Will do.
I just had one thing. It's not really about Halo. The main project is doing a coat giveaway to celebrate their 1-year anniversary this weekend. It's on Saturday. And it's although it's called the Main Project, it's not on Main, it's on State Street, right over by the old Dania Hall. And so DeAndre's got a lot of people that have donated coats and gloves for kids. So if you have anybody in your agency that is in need of a coat for a child, that'd be a great place to send them over this weekend. And I think that's on Saturday. It's on the Facebook page for the Main Place. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
Very good. Mary Beth has put the community drive drive-in baby shower notice up on the chat. It is at work at the Racine County Workforce Development Center on 16th Street. It is from 11 until 2. It is on the 16th, which is this Saturday, I believe. My goodness, I can't believe we're already in there. Also would like you to keep in mind that this is Domestic Violence Month. We did hear from speakers last month on domestic violence and on human trafficking. We'd like you to keep the people that are experiencing those problems and the people that are working to help people survive and to work to advocate to address these concerns and problems in your prayers and in your thoughts. Anybody else have anything else? Anybody want to add anything else? Any updates? Go arounds? Scott?
Yeah, I'll add something. It's actually just going back a little bit to the warming centers because I just remembered something about the last round. The last time we had warming centers, there weren't a lot, but there were a few people who seemed to believe that it was a shelter and they were going to sleep at that location at night. And I think part of it was related to using the terminology of a day shelter that sometimes is confusing to people. So if you're advertising or whatever, keep that in mind that we want to sort of avoid people thinking that they're going to be there after hours when it closes and sleep there.
Good advice. Make sure we call them warming centers, not warming shelters. Well, we've had a lot of information today, a lot. I will do my best to get this information up on our website. I say that every time, but it's not as easy. It's kind of tricky for me to figure out how to get this onto YouTube. And I'll have to see what happens because I hit the stop recording while I was trying to share with Vicki. So on that notice, I could use a motion to adjourn. Holly motions to adjourn.
So
and
moved.
Okay, and a second?
I'll second Pam.
Pam seconding. All those in favor, log off. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.